At this point, I'm sure you feel comfortable in the graphical user interface when it comes to creating those organizational units and those security groups, but let's have some fun in this nugget with PowerShell and automation. This is a hands-on lab nugget, so if it's convenient, launch the lab and follow along. So I initially built this lab for you with just the DC NUG 1 machine. That was all I put in here because that's all we're going to be using. And sure enough, it failed when I tried to script the creation of new Active Directory accounts. Why? Well, I didn't give us DC NUG 2 initially, and that is our RID master. Remember that? We ended up creating a DC NUG 2, and at some point, you and I put the RID master role over there. So sure enough, we couldn't create new objects with our RID master offline. A fun little troubleshooting experience for those FSMO roles. Once you get into DC NUG 1, what we're going to do is we're going to use the integrated scripting environment in order to run our PowerShell commands. So I want you to launch that ISE. What I've done for you is I've placed in your documents folder on DC NUG 1 a nice PowerShell script that we're going to use. The first thing that we're going to do though is let's show the scripting pane, and let's open in the scripting pane that auto AD group OU. It should come up automatically in your documents folder. First up, you see we have the new AD organizational unit command, and we pass it the name of our AD of Florida Sales. And notice I place it in nuggetlab.com. So very simple syntax here to create a new organizational unit. Put your cursor anywhere in this line and then hit this run selection, and it'll drop that into the bottom pane for us, the actual PowerShell pane itself, and it'll run that command. And guess what? No error. We just created the Florida Sales OU. Now we get a little bit of bonus review, don't we? Let's create some new Active Directory user accounts, and they'll be named User 1, User 2, User 3 with the appropriate SAM account names. And let's place those using the path parameter inside that Florida Sales OU that we just created. Now, really think about this when you're creating your user accounts, because what aren't we adding here? And it may be our policy not to do it, but I'm just saying, what are we not doing when we create these user accounts that we remember from automating user account creation? We are not setting passwords. So these 3 user accounts that we're creating are going to be disabled by default inside Active Directory, and we're going to have a little trouble enabling them because there is no password associated with them. So notice I have highlighted all 3 of these commands, and I will run that selection, and we just created 3 new Active Directory user accounts in the Florida Sales OU. Next up, what we're going to do is we're going to use the new AD group command. Look at that. And we're going to create an Active Directory group named Florida Sales Account Operator. The SAM account name will be the same. The group category will be a security group. The group scope will be domain local. And we're going to place this thing into that Florida Sales OU. So let's place our cursor on that line. Let's run the selection, and we just created a group. How easy this is inside a PowerShell. Now, you talk about easy, let's take our user accounts from the User 1, User 2, User 3 creation here, and let's add them as group members to that Florida Sales Account Operators group we just created. So we'll run that selection, and we just added those 3 user accounts. Now we have an objective that says we would want to be able to enumerate the members of a group that we create. And obviously we have this Florida Sales Account Operators group. Let's enumerate it, to use their official language. That's just really means to list, right? So we'll place the cursor in the get AD group member commandlet for the Florida Sales Account Operators group. We'll run that command, and there we see an incredible confirmation that everything in this nugget worked for us. There is User 3, for example, in the Florida Sales OU inside of nuggetlab.com. If we launch our server manager and go to the Active Directory users and computers and look in here, of course, we're going to see our Florida Sales OU that we created with PowerShell. Awesome. There's our group. We can enumerate the group members by double-clicking the group and going to members and ensuring that there's User 1, User 2, and User 3. And just as we suspected, these users are not enabled, are they? We did not provide an initial password, so if we right-click this entity and we say Enable Account, it's going to say, nope, sorry. sorry, the password doesn't meet the password security that we have in place for this domain. So just these are things that we want to be thinking about inside of those PowerShell scripts. Can you manipulate multiple things at once in here? I need to impress upon you that you can. For instance, if you click user 1 and then you shift click all the way down to user 3, we can right click and do things to these multiple user accounts. Look at this quick way to add them to a group. We can disable, enable, move. We could delete, we could cut, we could go to properties, and under properties, we can manipulate the properties for these multiple items. For instance, I could go in under account and I could say, okay, for this account setting of user must change password at next logon, I'm going to check this here and I'll leave it grayed out. So we're going to actually reset that for all 3 of these user accounts. Let's go in and see if that worked. Now, if we go under account, sure enough, the user must change password at next logon screen is cleared. Keep in mind, though, we didn't have an option to shift click these user accounts and reset password. So the resetting of a password would be on a user account by user account basis, going in and setting the password the way we want it, controlling whether they must change it at next logon or not, and saying, okay, now this password is meeting our complexity requirements. Now we can right click and enable this account. So just wanted to show you the ability to influence multiple accounts at one time inside the graphical user interface, because I realized shooting this demonstration for you, we had not done that before anywhere else. So in this hands-on lab nugget, you and I took a look at the ability to use PowerShell to create OUs, to create security groups, to create user accounts, a review of that, to place those user accounts in a security group, to enumerate the group members. It's all so easy inside of PowerShell, isn't it? I hope you found this nugget informative, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.